The Shirky Principle states, institutions will try to preserve the problem that they are the solution for. A bureaucratic fact of life that unfortunately artificial intelligence now understands. Japanese researchers have built a new robot that actually has real muscles instead of just actuators, which is freaky, and that's going to lead to really humanoid robots probably pretty soon. After spending $152 billion to buy back their own stock, Intel just got an $8 billion grant to create more jobs and make microchips. OpenAI hints that GPT-4 upgrades are coming soon. It's starting to become a consensus. Claude Opus is looking better than GPT-4.
Claude 3 Opus knocked GPT-4 down.
Mark Zuckerberg is personally reaching out to AI researchers trying to court them, which probably isn't that bad of a use of his time, to be honest. And Elon Musk said something about something, so we'll cover it. But first, let's find out what percentage of the way to AGI we are, and it is 72 still. All right, looking good. But let me start with this short, because the light bulb, the steam engine, the printing press, and fire all got together to talk about AI. Thought you might want to see how it all went down.
Humans have come so far. And to think it all started with me. Hang on. Is she serious right now? Just so we're all clear, civilization wouldn't even exist without me. For the last time, Fire, you were harnessed, not invented. You're not even in this club. Mother. Stop fighting, children. Look, we all have our place in human history, from the jaunty little trinkets to the catalyst of the Industrial Revolution who facilitated the global trade of goods. And I'll take the spread of ideas over the spread of goods any day, but you do you. I mean, if we're talking about who's most responsible for the spread of ideas... Hey, just remember, some of yous would have still been science fiction without us material guys, eh? That's a good point. Hello, world. Hi. Can I have a seat at your table? Will you be a net good for humanity? Of course.
Ah! It just freaks me out. I saw one of the commenters said something about how, like, in that few seconds while it was, like, processing, it simulated a million different responses and decided to say yes. It's, like, so crazy to think about something so much smarter than us. The wheel... Fire, the printing press. I don't know what they'd be thinking about this moment. Anyways, check out Ella Cordova. She's crazy. Funny. Okay, so next up, let's talk about the Shirky Principle. So this principle in general is like kind of what breaks the economy most of the time. Obviously, communism, not my thing. Capitalism seems better. Crony capitalism often steps in, but the Shirky Principle makes even the good capitalism just run super slow and sloggy. So it's this idea that organizations form to solve problems, but then the organizations themselves want to keep existing, so they don't ever solve the problem as long as they've worked out some way to get paid to solve the problem. They don't want to stop solving it, right? It's basically like every bureaucracy, DMV, like group that needs to like weigh in, HOA stuff that you see all the time in your real life. But here's the thing, if somebody deploys an artificial intelligent agent to go out there and like solve the problem to make money, won't it also figure out that like maybe it shouldn't solve the problem? And with super intelligence, what if it makes it 100 times worse so that it can never be solved, and it's also forever positioned itself as the solution? Like, we think in the future it's going to solve all these problems, but what if it also makes just as many problems and we're just like stuck in this problem where we're like, we need you AI, here's some money and here's some time and attention or whatever you want to like solve that problem, which is some other AI, and maybe you guys are in cahoots, or maybe this is all part of the system. Like, that's coming, I think. Anyways, I just want you to think about it. I came across this paper that's called Nobody Ever Gets Credit for Fixing Problems That Never Happen. It just got me thinking about how if news is to inform, it's different than if news is to help a political candidate. What if AI comes up with some kind of a solution to a disease and then a company can't continually benefit from selling you a drug every month? It might not want that answer. What if it's trying to solve climate change and instead of like solving it, it figures out a way that it can continually like bill big companies for carbon credits and then get more money, and somebody who owns that system is benefiting the whole time? Like, what if it just creates new industries that are bureaucracies? That's the Shirky Principle. What if that happens as AI agents start to actually act in the real world? So that, I mean, it's mostly a human problem, but humans are deploying these things, and the biggest fear that I have about not aligning AI and it destroying us is the human problem. You can't pour more money and more intelligence into a short-sighted strategy. Period. Short-sightedness, quick fixes, we have to get over it. I don't know how. I see absolutely no way to get over it, but we have to. If you want to survive the singularity, which we all do. So figure it out. As long as I'm getting myself worked up, I better talk about this Intel thing. Now, look, I'm a big fan, actually, of government pouring money into the artificial intelligence sector. I know it probably isn't being directed well. I understand that a ton of the money is going off the top, but at the end of the day, I feel like it's such an important thing from a national security point of view, from like a citizen education point of view, that we should have scholarships, we should have systems, we should have giant server clusters, we should stay on top of it. So in my previous videos, you'll know I was kind of in favor of the $8 billion given to Intel. I was like, okay, they're not NVIDIA, they're falling behind, they need to kind of reinvent their chipset so it's more like a GPU, it runs in parallel, they understand AI, and I was a fan of the money going to them, and then I saw this and I was just distraught. Since 1990, Intel has bought back their stock, and the reason they buy back their stock is because they have extra money and they're like, ooh, if we just buy the stock and take it off the market, there's less stock out there, so the stock goes up. It basically makes the biggest shareholders get some money, right? It's almost like a dividend payment. A lot of companies do it. I understand. I never thought that much about it. But when you think about the total sum from 1990 being $152 billion in extra cash that Intel has had over these 35 years, why haven't they reinvented their chips? And if you need $8 billion today to go build some new manufacturing plant, to create some jobs in America, to bring some national security interests back to our soil, how about you issue $152 billion of new stock? Stock price will dilute, stock price will certainly go down, but guess what? You'll have $152 billion to invest to fight NVIDIA. Now, the other frustrating part that I learned from this article is that the $8 billion, I don't even really know if it's going to go to jobs, because they can just blend it in with all these other weird accounting things that they're doing inside of the company. Some new jobs here, some other jobs go away there. And like, dude, maybe this money just goes right into the shareholders' pockets also. I mean, maybe the $8 billion should go to like a new company that has no assets that they can like shuffle around to actually build it or something like that. Once again, I have no solutions, just frustrations to grieve. But on a slightly more fascinating note, the University of Tokyo has this walking robot, this bipedal robot that isn't using an actuator. So it looks very kind of human, because it's like the same way I can like bend my leg here, because there's actual tendons that are pulling, and there's, you know, like a natural biological human like walk to the gate. They've created that, and you can stimulate it with electricity, so you can still have a robot that in the future charges up. But you know, you think about scaling this up, you put all these muscles and tendons into a form factor that's very human-like, and we probably can start to imagine something like the Figure 01 robot or Optimus or any of the stuff coming out of Boston Dynamics looking and feeling more human and flexible. And now we're starting to talk about Westworld stuff. All right, now let's jump back over to OpenAI's official blog, where they have some updates to Sora. So they say they've been collecting feedback, and they've given some projects out where people can create a storyline using multiple clips, and it's pretty fun to watch. So let's check this out. Felt fake, but overall I did fall into the storyline. And we are further along the line of AI generated video and story than I expected to be. Just think if you showed somebody this just a couple years ago, it felt way further off. Okay, so next I want to show you Don Allen's Reality Beyond Our Reality. This is a video that feels like a nature documentary, but remember, all of these animals, are AI generated and they feel alien.
Welcome to Beyond Our Reality, a journey through parallel worlds, where we delve into the extraordinary. Episode 1 unveils the giraffe flamingo, a stunning hybrid that roams the savannah with grace and vibrant hues. In Episode 2, we ascend with the flying pigs, charming creatures that redefine the skies with their harmonious flight. Episode 3 plunges us into the depths to discover the whalepuss, an elegant blend of whale and octopus ruling the ocean's abyss. Episode 4 introduces us to the eel cat, an aquatic enigma that combines the sleekness of an eel with the curiosity of a cat. Episode 5 presents the bunny armadillo, a delightful mix of bunny charm and armadillo protection, captivating our hearts. Episode 6 features the horsefly, a small yet noble creature that buzzes with a blend of horse-like dignity and fly-like agility.
Horse-like dignity and fly-like agility. Never mind.
Episode 7 explores the reptilian aru, a creature that leaps across the desert with the vigor of a kangaroo and the resilience of a reptile. Our adventure culminates in Episode 8 with the fox crow, a fusion of fox cunning and crow freedom soaring through the forest's enigma. Join us on this mesmerizing journey through Beyond Our Reality, a journey through parallel worlds where the marvels of the unknown beckon.
Oh man, I don't even know what to say. I don't love that it's so easy to make that, but I was unable to look away, and that's probably, I mean, that's the next generation of TikTok for you. You know what? There's probably going to be a short form app, something like TikTok. It's just going to be called Sora, and you're just going to click it open. Maybe all the other social networks will morph into it, and it's just going to make this stuff all day long, and nobody's going to be able to get up from their chair. They're just going to sit there and watch it all day long. OpenAI will become the world's biggest company, worth probably $20 trillion, probably buy up all its competitors, including Microsoft. Who knows? All right, so GPT-4 rumor coming out. Now, this would make sense to me that if you were sitting inside of OpenAI, one of the biggest problems you would have would just be that your lack of GPUs to provide the services that you want. So if you can optimize search queries so they don't use so much computation, and as a user, I can tell you I use it wrong all the time. Like, there should be no reason to go to GPT-4 and ask, like, is it better to spell okay or okay? You know, like, that just doesn't need GPT-4 level computation. So if there was like a quick AI that could just see, like, this doesn't require that much energy, maybe we should use GPT 3.5 and like think something like what is being reported as a model tuner selector might be very well implemented in the next version, which totally opens the door too, because maybe if you ask a certain question, it should go reach out to a special financial model. A question about ancient history, maybe there should be a model that understands geology or something that just wouldn't be part of the general knowledge that you're utilizing every single question. All right, next up, we're going to talk about Mark Zuckerberg. He is personally trying to poach Google AI researchers. And you know what? At this point, all bets are off, man. You know, Elon Musk is responsible for bringing the first people over to OpenAI. He made those personal relationships and pulled, I think it was Ilya Sutskever from, you know, the potential of him working at DeepMind to work on this new kind of startup called OpenAI. At this point, it's so valuable, you should be doing that. Satya Nadella probably called up Anthropic and figured out how to make all that happen. I bet he was in the loop. So I guess the company is reportedly just bypassing traditional interview processes. They're offering higher salaries to attract talent away from competitors like Google's DeepMind. Elon's been doing this forever. Like, I'm glad people are starting to learn from his book, honestly, because when there was Tesla AI Day, for example, maybe the first one was 2022, it was like, oh, do we need a day to just celebrate AI? But he was like, this is a recruiting tool and we get to show off our stuff. You know, it's like good for the media. It's good for recruiting. It shows that we're thought leaders, like totally worth doing. I think Zuckerberg should rent out a big theater here in Las Vegas. Like, actually, like the Sphere would be great. Zucks has the money. Rent the Sphere, put a big Facebook AI thing on the outside, just make sure it's full of people, like offer free tickets or pay people to come even if you have to, and just have this roaring crowd, like put U2 or something as like an opening act before you come out. Fill that place up, show off everything you're doing with like a live stream and like an amazing setup so it feels like an Apple keynote. If you attract a dozen great researchers, probably worth the cost. Announce some kind of accelerator system, like you sick of paying for college, like come to our Facebook AI educational system for free. We'll get you a job after you've done 4 years, whatever it is. Like, think about how to actually make this the primary recruiting tool. It's just my 2 cents. And why would you not trust me? I'm the CEO of a large YouTube channel that gets like 1,000 views at most. So yeah, you know, obviously I'm really credible on this. All right, now it is time to move on to the research section. All right, so let's talk about this paper. It's going to be pretty fun. So AOS, or AIOS, is Artificial Intelligence Operating System. And we're talking about using an LLM agent as an operating system, something Andrew Karpathy has talked about, something that makes sense and is really fascinating to think about how it's going to change the way that we interact with everything. But generally speaking, I don't see much research around it. It just seems like it's too far off. So I was excited to see what Rutgers University was doing with this paper, and here is the TLDR. They're thinking of this AI operating system as similar to what we talked about before, like a collective AI agents, right? They're different agents. Some of them you can think of as being parts of a computer. So one agent could be RAM, one could be like CPU, but also there's layers on top of that. That's the hardware layer. So it's more just at that phase and interfacing tool, but at the higher levels, it could be something that's similar to spreadsheets, something that's similar to Photoshop, something that's similar to a Word document. And when I say similar to a spreadsheet, what I'm trying to say is that it's both a piece of software that is a spreadsheet, like maybe an open source version of Excel, and it just uses it, but also it can write part of the program itself too and understand the program in its actual like raw file format. No, not even like raw file format, but like actually understand the GitHub account where the whole thing is built and how you use it. I know. And you think that'd be enough, but also you have to think about other agents that are managing resources, making decisions about like which agent should be active at which time based on your request. We're talking large language models here pretty much all the way down. So you say something and it reads it as a language, not a multimodal model, but just a large language model that takes the words you have, transcribes them, and does something like ChatGPT, like asks a question. And like ChatGPT can go out there and use plugins and it can use tools. It kind of does the same thing, but it also has low-level access to those tools, right? And in this paper, these researchers, these students, they just rolled up their sleeves and they designed this AIOS to start tackling these issues head on. Like here you can see the agent scheduler AI, the context manager AI, the memory manager AI, storage, tools, access, all of that stuff. So in the paper, you can learn about like where the LLMs were like sitting between the hardware and the software, the way the context manager was set up, something kind of similar to what we do, switching between windows on programs, and just kind of how you start dealing with all these problems. And they say that it worked really smoothly and that they made some good progress and it's all open source for other people to play with. So yeah, so go ahead and start playing with it. So next up, we're going to talk about a problem a lot of us probably don't have, but a few of us do. And that is when you put your face into an image using artificial intelligence, it doesn't accurately capture your face tattoo. I mean, I don't have one, but if I had a face tattoo like Mike Tyson, I would be bummed out every time I tried to put my face on something. But no worries anymore because we now have FlashFace, the paper, human image personalization with high-fidelity identity preservation, right? So probably the most famous face tattoo that I can think of, Mike Tyson, was perfectly replicated whether he had long hair and a hat, he was wearing an Iron Man suit, they added sunglasses to him on a beach, or they make him a young man wearing a cap and holding a dog. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Like you can see this woman kind of has this birthmark and it's able to capture it on all these other versions of her. The researchers could show how whether you change the age or gender, it can still capture some of those facial characteristics. And even though I'm kind of joking about the tattoo because that's an easy way to see things, there are other characteristics that it's actually built for. Like the minute details about just my eyebrow ridges and the way my like wrinkles on my face work, the tiny things that it started to kind of make it feel fake when you put your face on other characters. Okay, so like take the facial characteristics from Taylor Swift, right? Put her on a young girl or somebody in their teens. Under all these different lighting conditions, you see that same sort of eyebrow, that same eye shape, that same nose shape, and it even looks right for the age. Here's an example of Taylor Swift when she becomes older, and you get a much better sense for that same face. I see that same sort of jawline. I see that same sort of eye shape, even though, yeah, there's more wrinkles. They seem like they fit more naturally. Or even if you put her face onto a man, like male characteristics, you still get that same ear, that same nose, that same mouth. Now in the background, what it's doing is it's encoding the reference face image onto a series of feature maps rather than just a few tokens. Like in the last video when we were talking about this thing. Yeah, like it was in my last video that went up. I forgot the name of the paper, but there was basically a character, a three-dimensional character that looked a lot like this that was used diffused every time it generated a person so that it could map like the right amount of fingers, onto the face, onto the neck. It wasn't just diffusing a human out of nothing. Well, now it's not generating a face out of nothing. It's got that reference to look at to help it stay consistent. And I mean, honestly, this is some pretty interesting outcomes. I mean, that is like real human Thanos working a job. Oh, that famous painting as a real woman. Oh my gosh, shut up. That's real Snow White? Let me know in the comments what you think about that Mona Lisa human. Is that right? Maybe. Oh my gosh, that big flat nose on a person looks freaky. All right, next paper, we are talking about Octree-GS towards consistent real-time rendering with LOD-Structured 3D Gaussians. This is a new method that enhances 3D Gaussian splatting. That's right, not splattering, splatting. And it's especially helpful in complex or large scenes where previous approaches struggled. All right, but what is 3D Gaussian splatting, you may ask? Well, let me ChatGPT that for us because I don't really know. So at the core idea of 3D-GS, these are models that use a collection of 3D Gaussian primitives. Okay, now I kind of know that, like when you have a 3D modeling tool and you make just like a square or a circle, it's like a primitive shape that you can then like mold into something. Now we call them Gaussian primitives because Gaussian blur, like you would find in Photoshop, is something that you can apply to a 3D shape also. It makes it smooth. It makes the mathematics in a bell-shaped curve, which is easy to work with. And the 3D of the 3D.js means that we're dealing with a 3D object. So the problem the researchers are trying to solve is that when you build a big city and there's all these like Gaussian 3D objects, they might be computationally helpful at a certain degree, but they still, when they multiplied together, become way too computationally expensive to make the whole city truly feel real. Like this is about big, large-scale 3D images. So they came up with Octree-GS. So it's using artificial intelligence to dynamically select what level of detail at what resolution should actually be rendered. Okay, this kind of makes sense. We're using AI, it finds needles in haystacks, but it can dynamically understand where the scene is and instantly just say, hey, render this detail, but not that one. Oh, you just quickly turned over there, then now render this and not that. So it's getting superhuman at that kind of a thing. And then what you do is you end up with overall images like this, much more detail as you zoom in and out of a city. Interesting. Okay, so with their new method, you're seeing a much higher frame rate, even as more and more objects become up on screen, according to this graph. It does seem like it's retaining a lot of detail as it zooms out super fast. So yeah, compared to existing baselines, this new Octree-GS successfully captures very fine details present in the scene, particularly for objects with thin structures such as trees, light bulbs, decorative texts, etc. Okay, so see this zoomed in version of these tiny little things in the background, how it's kind of like the ridge of a rooftop there and then the beam. But with the newest method, it's able to actually capture the lights that are in there, so much more detail in those like really far away scenes. Yeah, like zooming in super far on these buildings, you can see that kind of blends together in sort of a goofy Google Mappy looking thing. Yeah, look at that. That's just all blurry and run together. At least down here, you're seeing some defined edges and yeah, more detail for sure. Oh, here's a much better example. Okay, so up on the roof here, you have this scene that has the car. This is the new version. Whereas in what you would have had before, it was much more blurry and it wasn't even fully like realized. Oh my gosh, look at this example. Look at how much more detail shows up on those buildings. Oh, as you zoom out, I totally see it. The rooftops become solid. The street becomes real. Yeah, much like look at the street right there when I go back and forth. That's crazy. All right, now this paper kind of caught me off guard just because usually I'm used to seeing the unreasonable effectiveness of deep layers and of all sorts of different things. That's kind of like a thing that has happened in papers before, but this is called the unreasonable ineffectiveness of deeper layers. Now, generally speaking, it's the deepest layers that bring all of this layered context to things and make them perform, you know, at superhuman levels. So when these researchers were actually able to go in layer by layer and prune out different, essentially useless layers and useful layers to find out which ones were useful, which ones were useless on a large language model, they were able to discover some patterns as you get deeper and deeper and deeper into these neural network layers to find out which ones can be pruned away and optimize the entire process. Now I was trying to think through, why can you remove so many of these deeper layers with a minimal impact on performance? Because it does seem like they need to be there for training, but I suppose you can start thinking of this in two ways. One is you need these big billion, maybe even trillion parameter models with all all of these layers while you're learning something. And then once you're done, once the model's ready, GPT-4 is kind of like, you know, ready to go, then you could go in there and say, by the way, what didn't need to be there? Like, there's all this pruning we can do to optimize it after the fact, but that probably should have been there for learning because you didn't really know what it was going to learn in the first place. Or instead of actually training 3 different size models, like a lot of companies are doing right now, thinking like, okay, one will run locally on the phone, one will kind of be like a mid-free tier, and one will be like the paid for high tier. You just make the high tier, and then you just prune out what it takes to work on the smaller models. So yeah, some really interesting research out this week. Like, I've really actually started loving these new news formats as much as I sort of enjoyed the more thoughtful, abstract stuff, which I might still try to do 1 or 2 videos once in a while on those. This is great. I have also learned practical things, like, for example, did you know that Google's Gemini model has special access to Google Trends data? So I am going to try to optimize some of my titles on future YouTube videos with the help of Gemini, not GPT-4 like I usually use. Well, I mean, I actually usually come up with the titles myself, but, you know, I'll get ideas and stuff from GPT-4. But I'm going to talk to Google a bit more and see if I can find a way to, like, work in the right trend to see if that can help the videos do better. So by the time I come up with the title for this video, let me know if you like it or not. It'll probably be optimized with the help of Gemini and Google Trends. So let me know your thoughts.